Welcome back to another episode of Next Up with Purdue IE. Uh, I have a special guest today. One, because she's my student, and two, because she's graduating and leaving me behind, because she's too cool for me. But in all seriousness, I want to introduce my senior, Chloee Copper.
Yeah!
Got it right.
It's been a little challenge. She keeps calling me Cooper.
I got it right. Like the element. I was like the element.
Copper like the element. Yes.
Copper like
yes.
the element.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah.
I know. This is like another emotional meeting because it's like we don't see each other. Like we had our last meeting, even though you send me emails 1,000 times.
I do send you a lot of emails. I'm so
No,
sorry.
It's okay. No, I always enjoy it. It's never nothing I can't handle. But we had our last pre-advising meeting, so like you're gonna be.
Yeah, graduating next semester, off to new adventures, and
no.
Yeah, ready to go.
But if you don't mind, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Chloee Copper. I'm a senior in industrial engineering. I'm from Brown County, Indiana, and I guess a little about me. I love to read, and I love to travel and write. So I work for the School of Industrial Engineering, also on the communications team, where I get to kind of put some of my writing talent to good use. And yeah, that's me.
Well, thank you, Chloee. I always appreciate your presence. Your presence is a presence. See what I did there? So you know me. I'm very motivated, and I like to have word of the day. So, tell me what your one word of the day, and why.
Yeah, so I already mentioned that I'll be off to new adventures soon. So my word of the day is adventure. I think it's fitting since I'll be talking about my study abroad experiences, but finding the little adventures in your everyday life that really make life special and make especially college something to remember is very important for me.
Well, you're definitely an adventurous person.
Yes, I am.
I know that for a fact. My word of the day is patience. Patience, you have to have patience. And I think that's one thing that I struggle with. But I know I've been working on it to be a better version of myself. Because, every time we talk, I always try to tell you that work on being the better you. Mm-hmm. Don't try to be better than other people, be better than you. But in order to do that, you have to have patience. Patience with yourself, patience with life, patience with the process, and everything that comes with the process. Because the process in life is not easy, but it makes life worth living. So,
yeah.
Adventures and patience.
Yes, absolutely, and those go hand in hand too.
Yeah, because if you're gonna be adventurous, you gotta be patient. Because
gotta be patient.
It's crazy. And next year, I'm actually gonna be going skydiving.
Really?
Yeah.
That would be so exciting.
The only thing is I gotta drop 15 more pounds because you gotta be 235 or less.
You got it. I believe in you.
Oh yeah, that's literally I've been training my butt off for that.
Yes, to go skydiving.
Yeah,
wow.
I know, because I want to do that, and then possibly later on, not next year, but the following year, maybe bungee jump.
Bungee jump, all right. Yeah. Next up is base jumping, and then.
I honestly, if I could, because I've learned, because I am an adventurous person, that if I just do it, I went hiking, a couple weekends ago, and there was a crazy situation where it was either life or death. And I was just I just took the leap of faith and survived.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, otherwise, y'all probably wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. I'm glad you were here.
So, yeah, that was interesting. Yep. That could be an offline conversation, but it was a very intense situation where I didn't think I was going to make it, but courage and patience. So you talked a little bit about study abroad because we're going to talk a little bit more about study abroad. Can you tell our listeners about where you went and how was the process getting ready for your trip to the location that you went to?
Yeah, so I spent a couple weeks first in Seoul, South Korea. I was on a trip through the Department of State working with the National Security Language Initiatives for Youth program on their alumni travel program. So I was able to spend a couple weeks learning Korean, which is something that I have a few years experience with. in Korea, which was really fantastic. But about 2 days after returning from that trip, I went and got on another super long flight and flew all the way to Milan, Italy, where I spent the next few months studying abroad at the Politecnico di Milano, where I was in their management engineering courses, taking graduate level courses in operations and logistics management, which was super fantastic. But in preparing for both of those experiences, there was a lot of paperwork. And a lot of it was just making sure that I had all of the documents I needed, because especially for Italy, it's a very bureaucratic process where you can have everything you need and you can submit everything on time, and things still fall through. Mm-hmm. So I was really worried that I actually wasn't going to get my visa on time. And I ended up getting my visa about 2 days before I left. So that was fantastic for me to actually be able to go when I needed to. Mm-hmm. But the process, it was not easy. It was pretty daunting because I was doing all of this by myself, in combination with the study abroad office. But it was really difficult. But it was something that I knew I'd always wanted to do. So despite all the difficulties, I stuck with it, and I absolutely made sure that I had everything I needed. And by the time I arrived in both my locations, everything was set. It was all perfect, and everything ran smoothly from there.
You talked about preparation and everything, and I know we talked about this at our meeting. Mm-hmm. You saved for a long time. Can you tell everybody the process of what you actually, how long it took you to save for this one trip to Milan?
Absolutely. So I think it's so funny because I actually started saving for my study abroad back in kindergarten. I would get $10 when I made good grades, and my parents would give me $10 every semester, and I never spent a penny of it. It went right into my savings account, and that built up, gosh, how many years would that be? 13, 14 years since I was in kindergarten. And, I got my first job when I was 14. All of that money went aside for me to study abroad, really never buying anything more than I needed because I knew that traveling was my number one priority once I got to college. So, I spent quite a bit of my life saving up for my study abroad experience, and it was absolutely worth it. I came back with pretty much no money, which, I've been saving, so I'm glad that it all went to good use. It was really fantastic experience, and I got a couple scholarships that helped as well. So the Purdue Move Scholarship, I took the SAIL Study Abroad course, which gave me another $1,000 to help towards study abroad costs. And all of those things really helped me out as well. So I know study abroad is not within everyone's means. I know it's really expensive, and not everyone can afford to do it. And I feel very, very lucky and happy that I was able to do so.
It's interesting you mentioned study abroad because I actually might be studying abroad next year.
Really?
As a possible chaperone, and that's something we'll talk offline. But
okay, I'm so interested. Okay.
I threw my name in the hat and got a contact. Was like, hey, we actually might need you, so be prepared.
That
I was
is
like,
awesome.
All right, I'll be prepared.
You'll be ready. Yeah.
It'll be like I think it might be 2-3 weeks, but it'll be.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was like, that's more than enough. Get myself out of this country for a little while.
Yeah, have you traveled abroad much before? Yeah, where have you been?
DR. I don't count Canada Canada's pretty much like Buffalo. Because literally, where I'm from Buffalo, New York, Canada is literally a 10-minute drive. Like where I lived
It still counts.
where my apartment is, the Peace Bridge is right there.
Yep.
And then it's a 10-minute, like literally it's 10 minutes and I'm in Canada. So I don't really count that one. I've been there so many times. But DR, that's would be one of those places that I've been to. And I swung through Mexico, but it was just like through passing.
Okay.
So like some of the places I plan on going is like Japan. Like I was supposed to go this year, but like some things happened with our group that I was supposed to go with. So I'm gonna try next year. Hopefully, if it works itself out, one of the places they may go to is Japan. So I'm like, well, That'll save me a little bit of money.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I've flown over Japan on my way to Korea, but I have not been there. So.
And that's the goal for mine, to go to Japan. So with studying abroad and you planning and going through the process, getting there, what was it like? Because you're in a new country, there's obviously the language barrier. What were some difficulties that you had to deal with, like as you're starting your experience, and how has that helped you propel throughout your experience throughout the time you were there?
So when I first arrived in Italy, I knew absolutely no Italian, and I didn't have anyone else with me who knew Italian. And I was working on getting my temporary residency card. And I'd actually arrived in Italy too early for the university to help me out. So I spent a couple weeks working on that documentation by myself. And through that, I actually got a little bit of Italian experience, just going from absolute nothing to, learning how all the language works with their documentation was kind of crazy, a little overwhelming, but that kind of catapulted me into the language immersion journey. I never was able to take actual Italian classes while I was there, just because they were a little pricey for me. But it's something that I wish I had been able to do, I think. It would have really enhanced my experience. But also, not knowing Italian, you learn a lot of nonverbal communication skills when you're studying abroad and you don't know the language. You learn basically how to communicate without talking. It's lots of pointing, it's lots of awkward misunderstandings, but then, after a couple months, you kind of get the hang of it. And you start to get the routine, you start to understand, oh, this is how the grocery store works. This is how all these routines work. And it becomes less uncomfortable and less awkward. And, being put out there and having to go through all of those awkward situations kind of made me less fearful of those awkward situations, back in my home life. So I feel it really enhanced my confidence. It, made me turn into a wholly different person. I don't think I would be here if I hadn't studied abroad, not just because, the podcast is about study abroad, but also because I think I would have been really too nervous to even do something like this. So, it kind of made me less worried about all those tiny little things that build up and are awkward, or, the lulls in conversation. You just kind of start to forget about those things, which is really helpful, not only in everyday life, but also in interviews and job interviews. It makes it a lot easier to keep conversations going. So, yeah.
And it's interesting, like you mentioned, like you got there and you had to do everything by yourself. Does that make you a little bit more confident about, and this is not just study abroad, but just does it make you confident about going forward in your life, knowing that you had to go somewhere in a different place with no help and you had to do it by yourself? Do you feel a little bit more confident about your future now that you can handle those kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't know that was something that I was capable of getting through on my own. I had always assumed I would need, ridiculous amount of help to get through those tough situations, and not having that help and doing it on my own kind of, it made me more aware of my own skills and my own, I guess, just, oh gosh. So I guess it made me a lot, I'm so sorry.
It's okay, no, take your time.
Yes, so it definitely helped, at least in my confidence and my own skills and everything. So I was very, very excited to have gotten through that. And I think, having come past that, I kind of feel like I can conquer anything. I've been in another country, I've kind of taken on the world. And I mean, what compares to that? So, yeah.
So I want to go back into the preparation mode for study abroad. You talked a little bit about it, but is there a checklist that you would recommend for undergrads who are interested in study abroad? Because you mentioned a few things about paperwork and savings, but what are some other things that students who are undergrads or graduates, I'm pretty sure they have opportunities for graduates, that they should keep in mind when they're looking to study abroad? Because like we have students that always want to study abroad, but usually it's just for the experience to get away and not nothing more. And I know you went for a lot more just outside of the experience. So what would be that checklist or recommendations you would give to those students who are making decisions about studying abroad?
So for me, I know the process of studying abroad started freshman year because I had to plan out what I intended my courses to be. I took on heavier credit loads so I wouldn't have to worry as much when I was studying abroad. But I know at the latest, like start planning a year out of when you'd be leaving for your study abroad. So, that application process, I believe the application's due probably in September for undergrads. And really choosing the right location can have such a big impact on absolutely everything else that comes with study abroad, obviously, because no matter where you go, things are going to be different. There's going to be different cultures. The differences between what you're used to and how comfortable you are putting yourself into entirely new cultures, you got to be, self-aware of all of that. So, I guess take a look at your own strengths. Like, how adaptable are you? For me, Italian culture was different than, Midwestern culture in the United States, but it wasn't so different that I felt like a complete outsider and that I knew that I did know that I could adjust. So that was, something that I knew I needed. I didn't want a culture that I felt like I could not fully adjust to for my study abroad. But, it's different for everyone. Some people have interests in different regions of the world and, they've always wanted to see this certain thing. So they get interested in that country. And then they're kind of blown away by, the actual cultural part of it. And they feel that they can't really adjust. And they start to get worried, like, okay, maybe this isn't something that I can take on. But knowing your own strengths, knowing that you're choosing a location that you're comfortable with is super important. So that would probably be number one on the checklist is location. Absolutely take everything into consideration. Don't choose a location on a whim just because you've heard a little bit about it and you think it might be cool. Absolutely choose one for something that you are interested in and you feel that it's a region that you could thrive in. And then other than that, get your passport as early as possible. If you even think you might want to study abroad, I would recommend absolutely getting your passport ASAP just because that process can end up taking months longer than you think it will. I know my passport almost got denied the first time I tried to apply for one. So, having that knowledge, I would say, apply for a passport as soon as you possibly can. Get all that documentation. Like I mentioned, it's a huge process and a very painstaking one. So getting that all in as soon as possible. And then I guess on top of that, I was applying to study abroad with a couple of friends of mine. And we all wanted to go to Spain initially. And I was interested in Spain just because my friends were going to be there as well. And I thought it might be easier for me to adjust. But then they ended up taking internships during the summer. So they dropped study abroad and I switched to Italy. And it absolutely terrified me because I was worried about going alone. And all I can say is that you can have all of these plans and ideas of how incredible your study abroad experience is going to be with your friends, but it will never compare to being like solo in another country and, like I mentioned, taking on the world by yourself. That is what completely altered my viewpoint on my entire life. So I would say it's okay, absolutely, to study abroad with friends, but if you're worried about going alone, then, don't be. It's one of those things that makes you grow as a person. So checklist, definitely documentation, passport, location, and who you're going with, if you're gonna go solo or with any friends, so yeah.
Wow, okay, I'm keeping a mental check there. I got my passport. My passport is good for another 3 years, so
Okay.
I don't have to worry about that.
Yes.
Maybe paperwork, all that stuff, but I can do that on a whim. That is awesome that like you can provide that information because we have a lot of students that want to go and obviously hearing it from us, from the advisors is always good, but like hearing from somebody that actually went and went through what you went through, I think is great opportunity for them to learn. As you were in Milan, outside of language barrier and body gestures and understanding the culture, what were some other difficulties? Because you had to take classes out there too.
Yeah.
So, what were some other difficulties that you think students may encounter and how to overcome those particular difficulties?
So I was actually taking graduate level courses when I was at Polytechnico. And that was not something I thought I was prepared for, just because it seemed like such a jump from, the sophomore level classes that I had been used to. And I was really worried because I was the youngest person in classes of 200. And I was the only native English speaker. And yes, they did speak English in those courses, but it made it difficult to find other friends, to find teammates, to work on group projects with. That was something that I really struggled with. And I think particularly for me, what helped was getting involved in what's called the Erasmus Student Network. So this is a network of studying abroad, like students who are studying abroad in Europe. And it includes European students, includes students from all over the world, but this was kind of an organization that helped students meet one another kind of on a short-term basis, knowing that they might only be there for a semester or two. So it made it easier to make friends that way. I would say getting involved is super important. So for me, it was the ESN. For other students, it might be joining a club sport or, doing research in a lab that they didn't initially think they were going to do when they started studying abroad. So getting involved is definitely how you're going to make those friends and make those connections, which, in turn makes doing homework easier. It makes getting all those assignments turned in easier, getting teams formed, everything like that. Absolutely, I think that's something that students should start right off the bat, because as soon as you have orientation week, they're going to be having those meet and greets. And oftentimes, that's where I saw all the friend groups forming that stayed for the entire semester. So definitely get involved early and don't wait because you think you're adjusting to the country and you're like, okay, I'll put myself out there in a couple weeks. Don't do that. Get involved right away. I know it's so stressful, but once you have, those friends formed, it's going to make your entire experience a lot better. So there's that. And then also in Milan, the transportation network was very different from anything that I've ever experienced before. So I'm from a really tiny town, and we have absolutely no public transportation. And here in West Lafayette, we have the bus system, but in Milan, they had 3 different levels of trains, the bus system, taxis, Ubers, everything. So that was definitely something to adjust to. And getting familiar with the transportation network was so difficult for me. I didn't know how to ride the metro, and I think every single time I got on a metro train, I was going the wrong direction.
Oh.
So eventually I figured it out. And you kind of learn, like, between cities that most metro networks work the same, which was really helpful. So I'd say if you aren't familiar with metro networks, look up how it works maybe before you study abroad. Will definitely help. Especially in Italy, if you're getting on a larger train, they don't say this anywhere, but you have to have like a reservation and you have to stamp it before you get on the train. So for students who are like intending to study abroad in Italy, look up the train system, make sure you're not getting that like €400 fine because you were silly and didn't know what was going on. So yeah, that would be my main points.
I'm making a face of shock, like €400. Wait, what is €400 in US?
Oh, that's probably like $500.
Okay, I made the right face.
I don't know if that's the exact like actual fee, but that's what it felt like to me. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And a person that came from metropolitan city, like 90% of my life I took the metro, so it would be easy. But to like make a reservation, I never heard that
Yep.
before. Like you have to, and you have to get it stamped beforehand. So
Yep, you have to get it stamped, and if you don't, then they come check your ticket. Sometimes, not all the time, but yeah, it was pretty stressful.
wow. So with all these experiences, you talked about how setting yourself up to go to study abroad. When you got there, the stress, things you had to deal with, the classes. What is one thing throughout everything you just said that was like the most memorable and why?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I mentioned, growing friend networks and everything. I went into my housing application process having absolutely no idea what to expect. I went on a website called Spot a Home, which was a reputable site for me to find housing. But the problem was I wouldn't know my roommates until I got there. And when I got to my apartment, immediately I knew that my roommates and I were going to be the best of friends. So everyone arrived a couple weeks after I did, but we grew just the best friendship out of our housing situation, where we would hang out all the time, we would go explore the city together, and these guys became like my closest friends. So yeah, I had my friends that I knew from classes, but these, the roommates who were 5 to 12 years older than me were the ones kind of, guiding me through life at this point. They kind of took me under their wing. So I would say, the most memorable thing was going out to my roommate's birthday dinner for all-you-can-eat sushi in this very strange little restaurant in Milan. And just celebrating with my roommates. And that was something that I'll never forget. We've got like Polaroid photos from all of our adventures together hanging on my wall. And yeah, absolutely. My roommates were part of the best experiences I had studying abroad. And I feel very lucky that I got good roommates, ones who also wanted to build friendships. So they made my entire study abroad experience so much better. Yeah, so I lucked into that. I don't have advice for getting good roommates other than, just being lucky. But I was pretty happy for the way it worked out.
Aw, that's so sweet. I'm pretty sure, hopefully, if they're listening, they.
Oh, I'm sending them the link. Yes, absolutely. We connected on LinkedIn, so they'll be here.
They'll be able to listen. With that being said, how do you think your experiences help you navigate through industrial engineering with studying abroad?
So it was very interesting getting an international perspective on engineering, particularly in like supply chain engineering. Purdue does a really good job of, trying to foster more of a wide perspective on IE, I think. But getting like the management engineering perspective from Polimi, it, had a super heavy focus on sustainability. It, made me see everything in terms of euros and meters instead of dollars and feet. And they use different like metrics for, analyzing KPIs, key performance indicators, everything like that. So trying to navigate back to IE after my study abroad experience, like trying to go through Purdue courses, I had to remind myself, like, oh, these are things that I learned abroad. They do apply here, but I have to translate them. I have to shift my perspective back to a U.S. perspective. And some things I didn't even realize were not, talked about in the U.S. as, part of value stream mapping, things that were done in Europe but that aren't done here. So, I feel like I have more of a knowledge on the international perspective of engineering and not only just the, Purdue perspective, which is pretty fantastic to begin with, but,
Yes.
I was able to just build off of that. So, navigating IE, also, I had to take those graduate level courses, which were really tough for me because it was a challenge that I'd never overcome before. But now coming back to this semester in IE, I feel like I know so much more and I feel like I can navigate my classes better this semester. Yeah.
Well, I'm so happy that you had the opportunity to study abroad. I know that you were emailing me a bunch of times.
Yes, I told you, I email you so much.
I was like, all right.
Like, just making sure, like, this class counts as credit, right?
I was just like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
let me respond. Oh, no,
like, we just had a meeting about this, Chloe.
Yes, pretty much. So I would like to give the opportunity for my guests to be able to give their special shout outs, because I know you got a lot to give special
Yes,
shout outs.
I do.
So if you don't mind, for our listeners, give your special shout out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank you, Daniel, for being my advisor and helping me through absolutely everything with study abroad. I know, like I mentioned, I ask a lot of questions, but you are always there to answer them in such a timely manner, too. Like, you don't even put it off. You're just like, you get it done right away.
Appreciate
So
that.
thank you. Also, thanks to Dave Montgomery behind the camera. He's also my boss for the School of IE, so, you know, he's fantastic, like, best boss ever, couldn't ask for any more. So thank you, Dave. You know, thanks to everybody in the Office of Study Abroad who helped me through all of those difficult times that I mentioned, who are also answering a lot of my emails, organizing everything to help me with my visa application process. That was huge help. And I know that it's something that deters students from studying abroad when they hear how difficult it can be. But really knowing that I always had Office Study Abroad at my back made it a lot easier. And then on top of that, I want to say thank you to my parents who funded some of my travels. You know, they were helping me work out with all of the, you know, the unexpected expenses. They were always there, even at 3 a.m. calls when I was having difficulties. They would be there, you know, helping me out. So I wanted to say thank you to them. And yeah, thank you to all of my IE professors who, you know, have helped me adjust back to life at Purdue. Yeah, we've had some pretty fun experiences, and I'm super excited to see what the next semester holds. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Special shout out to obviously Dave Montgomery,
Yep.
the guy that does the recording and editing and everything. Man, we wouldn't have this show if it wasn't for Dave and I having our conversation about our student spotlights and saying, no, we could turn this into a podcast. So always a shout out to David. He knows I do it almost every episode. At some point, I'm gonna maybe tone it down a little bit. But shout out to the College of Engineering, Purdue IE, great place to be. Shout out to Purdue University, and then shout out to Chloe because this is like our present bowl final little meeting, because we don't really get to meet anymore unless she stops by my office. But like, this is like, I'm really ecstatic that we were able to have this. It's almost like a closing and not a goodbye, but it's more of just like a stamp on like
Yeah.
our experience together.
Like
as
closing remarks.
Yes, closing
Exactly.
remarks, like as advisor and advisee. So, and I want to give the flowers to you because you were an amazing advisor. All my students are amazing, but you were just as amazing. You were great, like studying abroad. Like I was happy to answer every question, and I knew first when we met, as far as advisee and advisor, that we clicked right away. Like it was the easiest conversation. I was like, this is the easiest conversation. Like I'm never gonna have a problem with this person, and I never did. And I can't wait to see what you do next because you're gonna change the world. So
Thank you.
I want to make sure I
That's
give
so
my
sweet.
flowers to you. But this has been an episode of Next Up with Purdue IE. Thank you for listening, our listeners on YouTube, our listeners on Spotify. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Purdue IE, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, which is Twitter for people that don't know what it is. But thank you for your time and thank you for listening. Have a good day.